to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the Sontaran game, written by Jacqueline Ryder. This is a quick read novel. For those of you who don't know, Quick Read is a company owned by Galaxy, a chocolate making factory. Okay, and that make small little novellas, small little books, very small. And Quick Read were basically designed for an adult audience to help them get easier to read, with a lot of their stories being about like ghosts and horror stuff. But they also licensed Doctor Who stories, and I think like they could be read by anyone really. They are meant to be like proper novels, but written in a much lighter text, so it'll help encourage people into reading, which helps me immensely because I'm dyslexic, and I did actually get into reading books, into novels, through books like this. So, very interested. And I have talked about a few quick read books before, but it's been a while, so I thought I will refresh your memory. This story came out, I believe, in 2009, which is when Doctor Who had that gap where David Tennant was leaving. Quick Read did, I think, 2 novels with just the Doctor. There's no companions, no Donna, no Martha, no Rose, making Donna the only companion of the era when the Quick Read novels were being released, but didn't actually appear in any of the Quick Read novels, which is a bit of a shame. Also in 2009, the BBC books in general had a theme of having putting a companionless 10th Doctor up with a recurring monster, although the Quick Read novels have always pitted the Doctor against a recurring monster, but this one doesn't have a companion in it, and all the other books in 2009 pitted the Doctor against a classic monster, with this one being, of course, the Sontarans, who last appeared in Doctor Who in the Sontaran Stratagem and the Poisonous Sky, and we last seen them in Enemy of the Bane and the last Sontaran from the Sarah Jane Adventures. So, pretty cool stuff. I haven't heard anybody really talk about this. The Quick Read novels are very underrated, just across the board, despite them being, in various qualities and lengths and stuff. And not a lot of people talk them, which is strange because they're really cheap. But when this came out, it was only £2, as it says on the cover there. However, I got it a lot cheaper. I got this book for like 99p on Amazon or eBay, if I remember correctly. Sorry, my nose is going absolutely nuts. I do apologise. 16 chapters long. So let's get into it. So the Doctor arrives he arrives in this like dark room where he discovers like there's boots on the floor and a toolbox, and he meets up with this character, Emma, who basically becomes his companion throughout the story. And the Doctor and Emma immediately like hit it off. They have this bond between the two characters, which is strange because despite having this bond in the earlier part of the story, they don't actually spend a lot of time together. We quickly get introduced to a bunch of characters, a handful of characters, like Holly, I can't remember, I think Jess. Holly, Jess, what's the boy's name? Hank? Is it Hank? Oh my god, I can't remember the boy's name. That's really bad of me. I do apologise. That's really Sid. Sid was another one. So yeah, and the Doctor basically learns from these characters what's happening, what's been going on. Essentially, he's landed on base. This academy for the greatest athletes to ever have lived on Earth. And essentially, they're basically all training, all of these kids are training to become take place in parts in this global game event. It's basically the future Olympics, where the top athletes go and compete against everybody from around the world. It's the Olympics. It's future Olympics. However, there's been these power cuts, and when the power cut's been revived, they find a dead body, or usually they don't find one this time, which you'll get on in a bit, but the Doctor learns from these handful of people that there's been these deaths. People have been found in water and been electrocuted with one character, Lucy, being found dead, her partner, the janitor, and though he isn't actually dead as far as we know, the electrician who Sid mistaked the Doctor for being an electrician to try and fix all of these blackouts, he has gone missing. And the Doctor's originally like, hold on, there's been a portrait of deaths and you've just been covering them up. Why? And essentially that we learned that people are really dedicated here to the sport. And essentially they didn't want the police to get involved, because otherwise if the police found that there's murders in here, then essentially the games will stop and people will then be like out of the games, or at least will lose a few days of training. And these people are so determined of just keeping things on track. But a handful of people basically cover up the bodies just to keep the games going. And originally they suspect that these murders were another athlete who wanted to who basically wanted to get rid of the opponents, get rid of the competition. But the Doctor and Emma quickly put together, it's like, that can't be the case because different athletes from different sports are being killed. One swimmer, one spinner, one runner, like all stuff like that. So that doesn't really make sense in that regard. And it seems just so happens that the Sontarans actually have made their way and conquered base. This leads into a really great action scene in which Doctor and this handful of kids are being sneaking around to try and find a exit, because the Doctor knows nobody cares about the games. If the Sontarans get you, they are going to die. I'm not giving you the chance to play the games. That's already gone. I'm giving you a chance to survive, to thrive. And I think the opening act of this story is really good because it's such a relatable concept, and it does actually reflect in the world that we live in, especially now. Of course, this novel was written before stuff like Harvey Weinstein and Noel Clarke, but the fact that people would just let these horrible things happen just on the case of just keeping things going, I think that speaks a lot. And like any industry really has known about this kind of concept before, where it's like there's this horrible thing that's happened or constantly happen, but you got to just keep covering it up just so that people can keep their jobs, people can just keep going, getting paid. Just the end goal is just to keep things going, and because of that, this kind of puts them in a vulnerable position. But what can they do? They're not going to stop the games because these athletes are all determined to take place in the global games. So even though, yes, it's really selfish, and yes, it is ridiculous, you do kind of see these kids' point of view. And although I don't think a lot of them are that interesting, it's only really Emma that gets a lot to do and say here with this, after they find out that there's a massive force field stopping all the kids from leaving. Doctor and this small band of crew, they essentially hide in this hall where they see the main Sontaran. I believe his name is Sontaran Stanks, but I'm dyslexic, so I'm probably reading his name wrong. They do make a stank joke in the novel at one point, so I'm going to presume I'm saying it right. Major Stank, he basically, we quickly learn that like he's taken a bunch of these children, these young athletes, and he basically wants to take them and use them to find out what they learn about humanity, because Earth is going to become a vital point in the Sontaran route and war. And so, essentially, when he learns that they are athletes that are ready to play the game, he essentially kickstarts this campaign to introduce this new game, the Sontaran Games, where it's basically a deadly version of the Olympics. And that's like the main thread of the second half, is it's an evil Olympics, in a sense, where kids die, people lose their lives, and it puts the Doctor in a very interesting position. But anyway, the scene I'm on about here, which I think makes Emma such an interesting character here, is she knows when the Doctor is angry and kind of understands his emotions. There's a scene in which the Sontarans on the stage kill a young man after he does one of his athletes. I think it was the long jump. I can't remember. And the Doctor is about to just get up and reveal himself and try and stop the Sontarans as quickly as possible. But Emma holds him back and essentially is like, Doctor, you are the only person who can stop the Sontarans. If you risk your life just to save one person, that's very selfish of you. You cannot risk your life just to save a handful of people. You have to stay alive in case you are needed for later on and you get the opportunity to just wipe out the Sontarans. And despite, clearly the Doctor should know that this is not a good thing and doesn't add up to the Doctor's personality at all, he does kind of consider it. And even though he's like, at a lot of points he's like, no, I am the Doctor, I am going to help as many people as I can, regardless of the head count. I'm going to say, hopefully I'm going to get nobody else to die for me. So the Doctor, but this Doctor has this dynamic in his head, and Emma's words kind of echo to him, and it's like, if I risk myself now, if I make him spot myself now, I might not be able to save people later on. And where would that put everyone else? So he is kind of hesitant in this story, which puts the 10th Doctor in a very unique situation. We rarely see the Doctor on the television like this. Now, when it comes to novels and audios and stuff, a lot of people ask me how submersive it is. Can you read this book and think and feel the 10th Doctor's word? Can you feel David Tennant reading out these words? Personally, on this book particularly, I can't. It's he's written in a way, I mean, apart from the wells, which is just David Tennant's thing, most of the dialogue can be written for any Doctor. It's basically the core Doctors in this book. For those of you who don't know, the core Doctors is a concept come up by fans where a writer writes for the Doctor, but he doesn't have any Doctor in particular in mind. He writes just for the main idea of the Doctor, and that's essentially it. And I feel like Jacqueline Reiner, who has written for the 10th Doctor before, if I remember, writes this book with the core Doctor in mind. I don't know why she's done this, but maybe she did write with David Tennant in mind, but I don't see it personally. But you can still picture David Tennant, but you're going to have to make the effort yourself, if that makes any sense. This would be a really good 4th Doctor story, just saying. But yeah, and so the first half is basically the Doctor and his small group of kids trying to save themselves from the Sontarans, whilst the second half, when they all get captured, with the exception of Emma, because the doctor's investigating these murders because he does not think they're Sontarans. He goes to the swimming pool where the first person, Laura, she died, and they smell, it just stinks of chloroform, and they actually find the hand of a person with no body attached. Somebody has been brutally murdered and been stuck into the drains, essentially. And with the exception of Emma, who hides in the water because she's just a swimmer, and she hides and she holds her breath underwater, the doctor and the rest of the crew basically gets taken to these games. But before that, we kind of learn that the Sontarans are actually looking for an individual. They are looking for someone, as they ask the doctor, is he a shapeshifter? If he's not a human. And I like how the doctor's just like, well, I kind of am. I'm not a shapeshifter, but I kind of am. I'd only do it like a few centuries. Does that count as a shapeshifter? That is a good question, though. Is the doctor a shapeshifter? And so the second half then is mainly these games. And we get some really interesting and really fun moments here. We get this race on this sand, and anybody who stays on the track for long gets basically wiped out, and they're all racing to each other. The last one is going to be killed, and so we get this scene in which all the characters are running. The doctor's kind of trying to slow himself to try and give everybody else the opportunity to survive, only to find that one of the kids that he'd been hanging around with, because they had an injured ankle, can't seem to sprint as fast as everyone else. And the doctor thinks about Emma's words and how if he risks his life for this boy, maybe the doctor will be killed, and then later on where he's needed, he won't be able to help. But the doctor convinces himself that he just cannot do that. And so he turns around and helps the boy, and basically beats the Sontarans on a technicality where it's like they both pass the line at the exact same moment. So really there's no loser. So really they should all live. And if you want to keep your honour, you keep us both alive. To which the Sontarans kind of agree. And we get then a great, another one where it's like this pole jump, where it's not a pole, like jump in, and you've got to have this, and you've got to pass this line. And if they don't pass the line, they get basically munched up by a Sontaran creature from the Sontarans' home planet. And the first boy passes it perfectly fine. This really confident person feels like, right, I can do this easy peasy. I've been training for this for my life, and it seems like a pretty easy task. However, he kind of messes up before the run, and so doesn't make it, and gets absolutely mauled by these creatures. And then it's the doctor's turn. And I like how the chapter that this is on, it ends like a classic Doctor Who cliffhanger where the Doctor jumps, he just about makes it, but one of his legs is just back enough so that the monsters get his leg and they start munching away. Luckily the Doctor was wearing these boots, the boots that he found earlier on, because he basically realizes that there is something to do with the electricians and he needs to save, so they need to wear rubber boots. And the Doctor had been wearing these rubber boots, and so it's basically kept his foot on his leg. That's a really cool scene. And then we also have this tug of war moment with this giant robot, and if whoever passes in the middle of the tug of war basically gets evaporated, and the robot is basically connected to the Sontarans' gravity, and so it could easily just pull all the athletes, including the Doctor, towards it, where the shield will then vaporize them all. To which I believe the person right at the front of the line gets killed, and the Doctor looks up and notices that Emma has actually found herself on top of the Sontarans' robot and changed the gravity situation so that the robot and the Sontarans, the gravity fields, because Sontarans, their gravity on the planet Sontar is 10 times heavier than that of Earth, and that's why they're so muscly. So they need these suits to kind of keep the gravity perfectly fine for them, otherwise they just start floating in the air, to which they start to do. And we get this really fun action scene where the Doctor's trying to get all of the athletes, like equipment, all the javelins, the bow and arrows, the spinners and all that, all of their equipment activated, because it's all stuck in a small little force field, whilst Harley's trying to do this walk on a rope to try and get the sonic screwdriver in there, whilst these Sontarans are jumping around like they're on the moon, trying to get a grasp on anybody that they can just shoot at, mainly the Doctor and who's ever holding the sonic screwdriver. And whilst Harley accidentally drops the sonic screwdriver because of her injured head, we have this cool race where a bunch of the students who were taking the sonic screwdriver from each other to try and keep it away from the Sontarans as possible, and then it all leads into this fantastic this fantastic ending where our enemies get easily defeated by the athletes after they gain all their equipment and are all targeting the probic vents of the Sontarans. But that's not really the end, because there's a small little bit at the end that basically wraps things up. This is a spoiler warning if you are interested in this story. So everybody's cheering, everybody is safe and sound, and the Doctor basically starts heading off to the TARDIS, where he finds Emma, who we presumed died during the events of swapping the gravity on the robot, because when the robot went really light, the Tug of War basically pulled the machine forward and vaporized the robot, presumably with Emma on it, but Emma seemed to have survived. And the Doctor basically puts together what has been happening, because he knows the Sontarans weren't the ones who killed all those people earlier. For one, they didn't seem to appear until after some of the murders, and killing by electrocution isn't their style. He also basically clicks together that when they were looking for a shapeshifter, they were looking for a particular kind of shapeshifter. The Sontarans' arch enemies, the Routons. And he basically reveals to us, the audience, that he knows that Emma is the Routon. Why was she there in the dark with him when there was just the boots and just the toolbox? We also learn that she stacked the electrician behind the TARDIS, given a great hiding place to hide one of the bodies. A very interesting dynamic. And this Routon basically reveals itself, and it's just like, I came here as a mission to the Routons because Earth is going to become this strategic point in the war for Sontar, against the Sontarans, and I'm here just to kill people and let the humans kill themselves. But the Doctor's like, no, you didn't. And the reason why I didn't basically reveal you were a Routon earlier on in the story is because there are multiple times through the story where Emma has helped other people like Harley and everybody, and even helped the Doctor from not putting himself into danger. And sure, it might have been because the Doctor's the great help against the Sontarans. However, the Doctor feels like there's a chance that Emma, because he can't see her as the Routon, can change. But there's a possibility that this Routon might not be as evil as it likes to lead to believe. And Emma is kind of like, I gotta do my mission. I'm sorry, I've got to. But there's this kind of remorse that we can feel, when it's like, maybe she is actually considering travelling with the Doctor as a companion and giving up its evil ways. However, a Sontaran comes through the door, and the Routons and the Sontaran basically kill themselves. They shoot at each other only for them to both simultaneously destroy one another, and basically because the Ruton died whilst keeps on storing energy, it basically becomes a ticking timing bomb, and the story ends with the Doctor going into the TARDIS and watching this explosion through the scanner, and essentially is like, I have to go, I can't mourn now, I have to go onto other planets and save people. Correction, save as many as I can. And it kind of leaves the story in a somber note where it's kind of like the Doctor's been thinking about this idea that he's had, which does kind of play into the Doctor's storyline in the final, on all the specials which David Tennant appeared in 2009, where it's the Doctor thinking about his mortality and basically should he risk himself for others and stuff like that. So that is kind of interesting. So there you go, that's the Sontaran games. Overall, it is a really good story. I might even consider this the best quick read novel out there. I highly recommend it if you're somebody who wants to get into reading. That's what these books are designed for. They're written in not like a lighter level, but in a way where it's not needlessly complicated in terms of description and that. A lot of the descriptions are very direct. They just tell you what you're supposed to see. Like the TARDIS, there's no these apt descriptions and stuff. But the plot itself is very engaging and feels very epic despite it being only a really short novel. And the band of crew the Doctor interacts with aren't that interesting, but they're interesting enough that the story can keep going and get us interested in the narrative as the story progresses. With the exception of Emma being a very interesting character and leaves the Doctor in a very morally grey mindset, only to be revealed at the end that she is essentially one of the main villains of the story. The Sontarans have a lot of fun and interesting moments with them starting these Sontaran games, and makes you feel like it's a very prominently a Sontaran story, which becomes very bare bones during the Stephen Moffat era. So I do kind of retroactively like this story mainly because of that. But anyway, so yeah, highly recommended. Sontaran's Game, Jacqueline Reiner, great novel. Check it out. So join me next time where Rani has a new friend of sorts. So join me next time for The Mad Woman in the Attic. And I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-ra.